We had like 45 views on episode 1, which you and I thought nobody was going to watch this. So.
That's me 44 times, man.
Shout out to the coworkers that are watching all of these videos.
Yeah, man. And my mom. What do you think about the book?
Oh, man, I've been thinking about this all day and what I wanted to...
Can you give it one word?
God, what would my
so
one
far
word?
we're only
what would my one word be? It would be well, cheers, Trevor.
Cheers, pup.
A little bit of a process getting this set up today, but that's all right.
It's a learning curve. It's not a bad learning curve.
Ooh, this 2018 Centimillion. Delicious.
Are you about it?
You want to try it?
Yeah.
Give that a whirl.
Oh, smells good.
Oh, yeah. I just want to melt right into this cauldron of Mistborn.
Yeah, I like how you use cauldron.
You know, I'm just kind of feeling that. What did I say last week? Cauldron of words.
Mm-hmm. Did you like that?
I did.
What'd you think about it?
I'm now 2 for 2 on dropping the word cauldron. And
yeah.
I just feel like if I was a plot goblin, I would just be stirring it up, stirring the plot up.
You would be, man. But you liked it? You liked the style of it? You know, because I'm still figuring it out. So in my mind, it'll only improve.
The editing was great.
For a first try.
And I loved your intro video, which I can't wait to see get put into this edit.
Oh, yeah. You liked how I did that?
I love it.
Yeah. I think, the other podcasts I watch, usually they'll pick a couple of highlights, like key things that that they talked about to catch the viewer's attention. So that's usually what they do, but we didn't.
So it's like a mixture of short form media and long form.
Imagine like 2 YouTube shorts in a row just to get the hooks out, like maybe almost
like a brief synopsis kind of.
Yeah, or like a cliffhanger. So that way they want to watch.
Ooh, I like that.
So that's what a lot of other people do, but we got to also make it our own.
Well, I mean, that intro video is certainly our own, so I'm certainly excited about that.
I was getting creative over the weekend though.
You must have been having some fun because it looked really good.
It was, it's like I've never had an excuse to do it before, to edit like that. So I'm like, wow, like what could I do? And I paid for a subscription, like it's a $10 a month subscription to edit it. So I was like, let's make something.
Yeah, sure.
So that's how I made that intro. I'm not married to that, but that was just me messing around.
Yeah, no, so, I like it a lot.
It's kind of cool. It's kind of punk. I'm going to send some more to you, though.
Sure.
I'm going to send a couple of I'm going to give you ones that are shorter, ones that are just maybe more simple. So we can really feel it out.
Yeah.
We're not married to anything. Except
I don't think so.
Women.
I did see that we had like 45 views on episode 1, which you and I thought nobody was going to watch this. So.
That's me 44 times, man.
Shout out to the coworkers that are watching all of these videos.
Yeah, man. And my mom.
Yeah.
She has no idea what fantasy is even about, but she's very supportive.
I like your version
this is
so
the original.
much more than mine.
You know what it is? Guess what that image is.
Is that the original? Because the original has like an anime cover.
I don't know.
The original has like an
Tor.
anime cover. And
I think he started with Tor.
Well, so I have a Tor version.
Oh, you do?
But it's
more recent?
It's bigger.
Yeah.
It's like, big.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, but I like this cover. You know what it is? It took me a minute to figure it out. These are the buildings. That's the window. Remember when Kelsier is that very first fight
Frederick Shaw
throws somebody out the window? He throws one
at House Venture.
At House, yeah, House Venture.
Yeah, when he goes to steal the atium.
Yeah, I've been calling it atium because it's like palladium. So that's the only way I can think to call it that.
I like that.
You call it atium.
Atium. Addy.
I was going back and forth, but
I've been listening to it on the audiobook, so I'll get back to you on
have?
what it says on the audiobook. Yeah, because when I get on the treadmill, it's nice to like knock out a chapter or two on the audiobook.
I was wondering how you read that so fast.
Dude,
I'm like, dude, I powered through a lot of this.
Because I get on the treadmill for an hour, so
that's helpful, man.
And I listen to it at like 1.2 speed, so it's an easy way to knock out 30 pages.
I listened to the first like minute of it. You know how you can get a free sample? The guy's voice sounds intimidating.
Well, Sanderson says that like, this is his guy. Like he
really?
loves this narrator, and I'm pretty sure he does all Sanderson books.
Yeah. Well,
don't quote me on that.
It matched the kind of like grungy vibe that Sanderson was trying to make for this anyways, right?
Yeah.
Like I think it made sense, dude. This guy puts a lot of time and thought into these books. So I just don't understand how he makes so many. Plus, he's considered every element. Like I said, I only listened to a couple seconds of that guy talking, but I'm like, his voice was freaking.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna have somebody
epic.
read it for 27 hours that it takes to read the book, like he better be a baller.
Yeah, 20. Could you even imagine that process?
Dude, oh my god. Well, because part of the way I got through. What's the one after Name of the Wind?
The Wise Man's Fear.
Wise Man's Fears. Yeah, I had to like go on a road trip, and I ripped that. But that was like 34 hours to listen to the whole book. Yeah. So I read the majority of it, but
wow,
I was in the book. I just got a little bit of headway down.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. The only audiobook I ever listened to was Dune's audiobook, but I read along with the audio.
Yeah, sure.
Because people told me it was hard to get into, and so. I watched a video or something where they're like, a good way to get around, like if you're struggling to get into something, read along with it, the audio.
It's a good idea.
It was cinematic because in Dune it had multiple people's voices narrating different characters.
Dude, so when I listened to the Dune audiobook, when the narrator comes in and he's the Mentat, I thought that dude was going to be a lizard.
Why?
Because he talks like a lizard. Like I pictured that dude as a scaly lizard.
Yeah. Which Mentat? The main guy?
The Harkonnen.
Yeah.
The Mentat.
That guy.
Dude, he sounds like a lizard in that book. And we might have to try to splice in a little bit of that voice there.
Yeah.
Because
if it can be found, I'll find it.
It sounds like a scaly guy.
I will say that, like, I spend a lot of time like scanning the depths of Google to find certain things I wanted to find.
I have it on audiobook, so I can screen record it.
Screen record it?
Get
That's
a little
cool.
copyright, sneak it in there.
Yeah.
Don't.
YouTube finds it. And also my the editing tool that I have will automatically see copyright and it'll tell me. Now I can still publish things, but it'll let me know.
It's like you're doing it wrong, but you still want to say yes now, yeah?
But dude,
ask for forgiveness.
I wanted to ask, what do you think about the book?
Oh man, I've been thinking about this all day and what I wanted to.
Can you give it one word?
God, what would my
far
one word?
we're only
what would my one word be? It would be I don't want to say underwhelming.
Oh no.
My brain immediately goes to underwhelming. But I did know, or I heard that this book starts out a little bit slower. So if I wasn't going to say underwhelming, I would say ambitious. Mm-hmm. It's ambitious and the plot is ambitious.
That's a good way to... Okay, that's good. We both came into this with a lot of preconceptions, though, where everybody said that Sanderson is so amazing.
Yeah, right.
So I think it's hard sometimes to give a book the time it needs to gestate and like build and all those fun things because you just want, whatever everybody is saying.
Yeah,
is so
right.
amazing.
I want that Sanderson punch to the gut.
Dude, you got to imagine, we went back in time. We're reading something he wrote in 2006.
Right. But it is regarded as his masterclass. I mean, behind Way of Kings.
I think a lot of people definitely will say this is one of his best works.
Well, I'm similar to Lies of Locke Lamora. I know I always talk about that. That's a heist book. And in any heist movie, it's all about the build-up, and then the last bit is the heist going down, and it's absolutely chaotic. So I'm not anticipating to be underwhelmed going further.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I will say my word is compelling. I will say I think it's been compelling so far. What I mean by and we can get into the details.
Sure.
I'll give us a snapshot of why I think it's compelling, and then we can kind of talk more about a couple of themes and stuff like that. But one reason I think it was compelling is I did like alchemy as a concept. I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah, I really am excited on your feedback on
allomancy.
Allomancy. I'm very interested on your feedback on hard magic.
Here's what I'll say. I thought when I first started reading it about allomancy, I thought that those powers would be underwhelming. It's like,
sure,
but in a way, it's made things more interesting, because even though the metals that they can burn seem trivial at first, when you first start learning about them, you roughly have metals that can push or pull. It'll literally push you, literally pull you towards metal, literally push down emotions, soothe them, or riot, pull emotions that you want. Roughly speaking, that's about everything. Then you have 10, which enhances your, your sight and hearing and things like that. Pewter makes you strong. But...
Well, it's interesting that you say that about the emotions pushing and pulling, because I didn't really consider the correlation between pushing and pulling with steel and iron. Like physically push and pull. Yeah. But it is the same for the soother or
soother's pushing
or the thug to rise them up or get hype. So I did not make that correlation.
Yeah. So that's so I liked that. But the reason why at first I was underwhelmed with that, but then as he's writing, he surprised me with how he was able to use these seemingly inconsequential tools.
Yes.
Right? Like immediately my mind went to Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm like, fire, wind, earth, like these amazingly the second you find out someone can throw fire, you're like, that's intense.
That's sick, yeah.
But like 10 just slightly enhances your ability to see and hear. I was like, but then he was masterful in his ability to make those things exciting. So I think in a way, you're doing more with less, kind of, and you surprise the reader a little bit, because he obviously thought a lot about that system and how he was going to use things like pushing and pulling to travel, like super interesting, So I did like that.
Vin and Kelsey are really the original TSA pre-candidates. They don't carry any metal on them at all, and they travel just no metal. Like they just walk right on through. They don't have to worry about anything.
Just a little coin purse.
Just a little coin purse to pay off the TSA guy. Be like, nah, I'm not taking my shoes
off.
off.
Let me get through without
I'm not taking my shoes off.
They don't even have shoes because they're burning tin.
Yeah. Yeah,
they would know that the TSA would find all that metal inside.
They're like, we got to search this guy. He's got a bunch of copper in his belly.
Yeah, geez, man.
He's muling pewter.
They would definitely think that Ven was muling something. She has that big scar now on her belly. They'd be like, okay, that's too fresh, dog.
Like, this girl's a little bit emo. Is she being trafficked? Is she not?
Yeah,
and she's got a bunch
of
pewter in her stomach.
Pewter. What are you doing with that pewter?
Yeah.
Well, anyways, man. This is pod number 2.
Yes, it is.
I am we're both co-hosts. I don't think there's a host here. That was something I was thinking. I'm co-host Trevor.
I'm co-host Wesley, and Trevor brings the notes, and I just fire off Q&A type deal. So,
and we drink wine,
and
we talk plot, and that's what we're here to do today. So I'm glad that you are coming in a little bit underwhelmed. I'm coming in whelmed.
Sure.
I wouldn't say I'm over or under, but I feel it's compelling.
And I think that what brings me back to ambitious, where, if you're ambitious, it's like, people are hesitant, or they don't necessarily believe in you. And then when you pull it off, they're like, wow, that was ambitious, and you did it. And so I think I'm going to stick with ambitious.
Okay, I like it, man. So who we were just talking about the different metals, and I'm going to assume anybody watching this podcast knows enough about Mistborn to kind of like know what's going on at this point. This book was written a while ago.
Sure. Well,
so we don't have to spoil, but
our friend Peter watched this, and he's never read the book. So should we give a little bit of a background on what the Mistborn are and what they're doing with the pewter in their belly?
We can kind of make it simple too, because it's like at the end of the day. Also, you know what, man? This is a heist, but at the same time, it's not, because it's just taking place over a long period of time. It's not. I kind of thought this would have a lot more action, where they would be like stealing a lot more, or like these, like because the book, the way that it sets it up is basically they have this big, we can talk a little bit about what's going on. So fill in some patches, but there's a society of people that have been subjugated, and they're called the Ska. And this is this group of lower class individuals, almost people that have been worked into slavery and have been completely subjugated. And essentially what's happened is there's this individual called the Lord Ruler, which is essentially God. I think they refer to him as a sliver of infinity, which I thought was interesting.
Technically immortal.
He's immortal, and I actually figured out why he's immortal. And I'll tell you.
Okay.
I'll tell you how I figured that out. But they talk about it in the book too. He's immortal. He's essentially God, and so he has on his way to on his ascension,
divinity,
to being God. He wipes out all other religions and creates a working class, but then creates a nobility, this sort of ruling class of people who essentially were people who believed in him before he ascended into being a ruler. So it is interesting. You do have, I think you'd consider that like an absolute monarchy. He's definitely kind of a dictator, but at the same time, he lets these ruling classes, these great houses, have some influence.
Yeah,
so it is kind of like a monarchy.
Yeah, for sure. And their currency, if you will, or his ability to, remain control over all these individuals is there's a metal that he stockpiles in the Frederick Shaw, which is what his castle is called, and it's called atium. Adium.
It's called adium.
It's called adium, palladium, adium. It's one of the metals where if you burn it, you get a slight view into the future, which is great. But so he's not a great guy. People aren't really happy with him, and so Kelsier is one of the main characters, and he's decided that he wants to try to overthrow the Lord Ruler alongside, and he's been contracted by a guy named Yedin, who is the leader of the Ska Rebellion, and they are going to try to overthrow the Lord Ruler by leading a series of attacks on one place called the Pits of Hathsin, which Kelsier has notoriously escaped, the only person to ever escape, near death, and they're going to try to lead a ruse or a distraction. Go ahead.
Yeah,
should I stop here?
Well, I think rebellion is a great word. Like, if for someone who's never heard this, this lower class is being is gonna rise against this upper class, and that's basically what it is.
Sure. Yes.
At a you can go into some of the details that do make it cool. There is magic involved.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. But I'm realizing it is a little bit less of a heist than I thought.
Yeah.
It starts off where it's like they devise this big plan for how they're going to pull off this heist. And I will say this: we're kind of jumping around, but I love that too, because it's like, when I was reading that part, I was like, that's a lot of detail. He doesn't leave a ton to the imagination. I've kind of recognized it's almost like he is getting so excited about what he's writing, he's telling the reader about it as it's happening.
He does hold your hand a little bit through that.
That's a great way to phrase it. I felt like I'm being a teeny bit handheld, but at the same time, who knows? The point of this podcast is just to talk about parts 1 and 2.
Yes.
Wes and I haven't read much beyond that, so we don't know how this book ends yet. We've watched nothing, read nothing.
Now back to the hand-holding piece about the pushing and pulling and iron and steel. Yeah. I am glad that he doesn't just drop you off and say burns iron, burns steel. Like, he does say burns steel and pulls it, burns iron and pushes it. Like, thank God. I need some hand-holding on the metal burning a little bit.
Do you flip at the beginning when you were learning it? Were you flipping back to the end of the book and looking at the metals?
I didn't even know that was at the end of the book.
Dude, that's so helpful. On the last page of the book, it breaks down all the metals and reminds you what it can do for you.
Ah, well.
So that's how I learned a lot.
I didn't know that.
The metals are all paired. So each metal has a corresponding metal that have similar properties, and it kind of talks about that in the book. One other thing that is an interesting caveat that I liked that he did was not everybody has these abilities. It's very rare to even have them. If you can burn one metal, then you're a misting. if you could burn all the metals, you're a Mistborn, but there's literally like 2 of them, plus the Lord Ruler.
Sure.
And so I think that's interesting because you don't want people with too much power, right? Right? If the whole group could, I think it's great. Like the rest of the group has their one specialty.
Right.
I think that was like
it's
a
kind
good
of like,
thing to do.
like, if you were going to relate it to like being a tradesman, I mean, the world needs tradesmen that are all good at one thing. And if everybody was good at everything, then, somebody's got to rise up. And I think it does go back to, a general theme of fantasy books as being a chosen one, or, the coming of age where, everything's kind of stacked against you, but you have all of these cards that you didn't know that you could play.
Yeah. Well, and that is what makes it a heist too, because if you watch a heist movie, you got your guy who's good at picking locks. Mm-hmm. You've got your guy who's like super strong and fights people. You're maybe someone who's really good with a gun, someone who's super like shyster and sneaky who makes the plans. Like, so you have your specialist, and then you have your one person who can do it all.
Or if you're Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, you can do everything.
I've never watched it.
Oh my God, Angelina Jolie and Lara Croft, Tomb Raider.
I know of it, and I think it's one of those movies that it's embarrassing I haven't seen by now.
Great flick.
Who's your favorite character?
I really like Breeze.
Yeah,
because Breeze.
What's funny?
What? Tell me.
No, I'll tell you at the end because I have a surprise for you in this podcast, and I'm gonna bust it out at the end.
I can't wait.
But I love that you said your favorite character is
Breeze is just like unapologetically gonna use his soothing abilities to get you to do stuff for him. Mm-hmm. And if you catch him, he's like, like, sorry, like you caught me, and like, what do you want me to do about it? And half the time they do it for him, and the other time they're like, it's just Breeze, like just let him be.
Well, he plays mind games too, which is smart. So sometimes. So he has the ability to, is that brass that he burns? Whatever it is that soothes?
Yeah, I think so.
I can look and check.
And he's always dressed to the nines, and he wears and he walks around with a cane. Brandon Sanderson always seems to reference where Breeze is resting his cane at all times. Brass. Okay, brass is the soother.
I can't believe you didn't look at this at the beginning.
Didn't even know that existed.
The last 2 pages literally break down all of the metals, what they mean. They show you which ones push, which ones pull.
It's interesting that it says Arcanum. Isn't that what didn't Quoth have to try to get into the
like
Arcanum?
It's like a school, right?
Yeah.
Kinda?
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that, but
I think you did.
It's just interesting that you're saying that about Breeze because he is so sly and he's so cool.
He's so sly.
And he just does what he wants, and he has such a way he can burn brass in a way where he can subtly soothe your emotions. He can push down the ones that he wants so you do what he tells you to do.
Yeah.
But what's also interesting, and he does it to even Mistborn. Like he does it to everybody, and they can barely sense it. But sometimes he'll get you to do it and not burn it at all. Yeah. Because he's like, you think he's doing it, but then you don't know if he's doing it, so you just do it anyway.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, he's a great character.
Big fan of Breeze. What do you like?
So I like 2 a lot, but I think I like 1 because I think it was good writing, and I'm glad he put him in there. And then another one just because he's so interesting. I like Sazed.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Obviously, he is a terraceman, and
I think he's going to be a very
influential,
important character.
So we got up basically to chapter 14 and 15 where he essentially saves Ven, and then you realize that, okay, this person has abilities that he's not talking about.
You don't know about them.
But the reason I like him is because he has the ability to, so he actually can burn a type of metal, and or he has some sort of ability that allows him to remember everything.
It's awesome.
So he can remember all things, which includes like, I think it's like 172 religions.
Which I thought was interesting because aren't there 172 countries on the planet?
I don't know.
I think there are 172 countries on the globe. So I thought that was an interesting number there.
562 religions, but 170 something languages.
Languages, yes.
So, anyways, I thought that was such a smart, and they call them keepers. So, these terracemen. Remember when we were talking at the beginning about how the Lord Ruler, on his way to subjugate all of all of mankind, one of the groups that he was most concerned with was the Terracemen.
Yeah.
And these keepers. And part of it was because they knew all, remembered all, and know all these religions. But it's just so smart of Sanderson. Like, that was another thing that made this book so compelling for me, is he made up several religions and talks about them in the book casually in dialogue with Vin and others. And one of the things he's able to do is sort of match religions to people's personality.
Yeah, I do love that.
That's so interesting.
I do love that. He's like, why aren't you be this religion?
Yeah, which I'm trying to. So that is one of the themes of this book. Is obviously it is, religion. I would say to an extent, and it's interesting. Like, why does he put that in there? It is obviously the Lord Ruler himself wanted to create the final empire.
Right.
He must not have you learn throughout the book in these small passages at the start of each chapter, the epigraphs, a sub-story within a story. Mm-hmm. It's hard to keep track of unless you literally go back and reread them all, which I did. And,
interesting.
Yeah, and it was interesting. And I have some theories. We don't have to get into those yet. But I do think part of the reason why he tried to wipe out all the Terracemen and also all the keepers, and why he reprogrammed them, basically. He put them through breeding programs and stuff to make them docile.
Cut their dicks off.
Their manhood. They kept their wee-wee, though.
Oh.
But they're...
yes.
So they can't reproduce their testicles. Turned them into eunuchs. So he did all these things to prevent... You know what I mean? To prevent them from continuing to be a threat to him. But for some reason, so religion is a threat to the Lord Ruler in a way. So part of me wonders, that's what he must have been the chosen one. He was the hero. And if you read the back cover, it says, once a hero arose to save the world. He failed. Ever since, the world has been a wasteland of ash and mist controlled by the immortal emperor known as the Lord Ruler. But hope survives. A new uprising is forming. Blah, blah, blah. And the Mistborn are going to come. But So that must have been him. That's my understanding, is that he, at the beginning, he is the person talking. Mm-hmm. Definitely. You mentioned that in the last podcast.
Yeah.
Definitely it's him talking. And this is his story. And for whatever reason, he was the chosen one. And there was something back then, they refer to it in the book so far as the deepness. Mm-hmm. And the deepness must be, they kind of refer to it as an actual thing, like maybe some sort of monster. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if it is or not, because
kind of like a plague almost.
Maybe it is, because there's no green grass. Mm-hmm. There's this ashen skies. There's these mists, which almost seems ecological. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if he's making some sort of environmental play to this. Mm. Maybe the deepness was this, some sort of plague, almost biblical type plague. And then he was supposed to come in and be the savior. Realized he couldn't do it, and there's certain passages where he doubts himself and stuff like that. And so I think but he wanted to maintain control, and so he went through and uniformly wiped out all other religions and potential threats to him and tried to build the final empire. So that's my best guess so far.
Yeah. I think the ash aspect and the environmental, where everything's brown and whatnot and there's ash everywhere, I'm almost curious if that adium is the cure to the deepness, and albeit it gives you the ability to see into the future when you burn it a little bit.
Well, if you're a Mistborn.
If you're a Mistborn. If you, maybe throw all the adium into a volcano or something, maybe that solves the deepness or whatever, and
he's withholding it for whatever reason.
Yes.
Well, and he also has this other ability, and which is to stay immortal. So it's obvious to me that he wants to keep things as it is. Why wouldn't he? If he has the ability to cure the deepness, why didn't he do it? Mm-hmm. Also, is the deepness still there? They refer to it as if it's in the past. Mm-hmm. So the ball scenes, Vin has to go to these big dances, these big elaborate balls. And they're always taking place in like a cathedral, basically. It's like
one of the nobles' houses.
But the houses have these mosaics, and the first house that she goes to had a mural it had a mosaic in the windows,
stained glass
that was the deepness, and it was a religious It had the Lord Ruler and stuff in it, almost like it would be at a church.
Yeah.
And so it makes me think that happened in the past, but people don't understand the mist in these things. So maybe they've been conditioned from the Lord Ruler and from the Steel Ministry to believe that this is the new world, but actually they're living in the deepness.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And nobody wants to go outside because of the mist. So the Lord Ruler's got to be creating this mist and creating like all of this,
Yeah, he is the
environmental
culprit
issues
for sure.
Yeah.
So we're just taking stabs here too because we have not finished the book. But.
Well, so back to the passages at the beginning of each chapter. After they go through the heist at Frederick Shaw, and Sazed's like, "Oh, this book that we captured, turns out it's nothing but a journal."
Yeah.
And so do we feel that those are the journal passages that Sazed is interpreting?
I think that what he's interpreting are the epigraphs at the beginning of each chapter.
Okay. Yeah. Those are getting pulled from that journal that they recovered from Shredder.
Yeah, I think
Shaw.
this whole thing is the Lord Ruler's journal. And that's why it was in that
safe
particular room. And Sazed happened to pick it up, and because Sazed is a terraceman and a keeper, he knows that language, which had been. Also, we got to realize this has been over 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So the ruler has been ruling for over 1,000 years, which is pretty crazy. So the only people that know these lost religions, these lost languages, these lost cultures, are the keepers.
God, so it's like, wouldn't that be nice to just like sit on your Iron Throne and be like 1,000 years old and just chill?
Also, what a bad dude, man! Like he mass religious genocide, mass cultural genocide, literal genocide of the Terracemen.
Yeah, made the whole world
slaves. Like this guy is the epitome of evil. But if you read these epigraphs, it's so interesting because he started off as a peasant boy.
Yeah, it's like a normal dude.
He was just a normal dude. And he had, there's some passages where he talks about his self-doubt and things like that. So it's so interesting. It's like Brandon also humanizes him. It's like you could almost learn to empathize with anybody.
Sure.
So if
that is good. That's a good point.
Yeah, like how interesting is that? But I guessed that was his journal, though.
Yeah.
So that was one thing I did guess, but then the book tells you. Literally, that's another thing that I don't think Sanderson had to spoon-feed us that.
No, he didn't. He could have kept that, at least left it
till the end.
Another part where Sazed was like, I still don't really know what this is.
Why don't you just let the reader figure out at the very end that it was obviously his journal?
I would have liked that to happen.
But, so I think that's an example of him kind of like, it's almost like he's really excited about this thing, and then he just tells you about it.
Right.
Like it's almost like giving someone their Christmas present before Christmas Day.
2 days before.
Yeah, so I think he does a little bit of that, and it's just like, hey, love the present, dog, but also could you wait?
He just must have so many good ideas to just blow the lid on that one.
Yeah, but I mean, so I thought that was pretty cool. What was I going to ask you? Oh, one of the observations that I made, or one of the other things I like, is Ven oftentimes has an inner dialogue that's the voice of her brother.
Literally just about to ask you.
Did you like that?
This. Yeah.
And it's Reed is his name.
Reen with an N.
Reen is his name. And part of me is feeling like that's pretty smart because I almost feel it's like it obviously gives you ideas of Ven's environment. Ven must have gone through something incredibly traumatic.
Reen did kill their mom.
Reen killed their mom. That's right. I forgot about that. So obviously she was a wicked person. She grew up.
Reen was wicked.
Well, maybe
he had a psychotic episode and killed the mom.
But maybe the mom was also. I don't know.
Well, it could have been. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. But she's on her own. So she obviously from an incredibly depraved situation, right? And you definitely question Reen's guidance in a lot of ways, but it also did protect her on the streets. Like she grows up in this thieving, backstabbing world, and he taught her how to grow thick skin. So it did help her survive. And but it's also a way to almost project herself, her subconscious, her conscience.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Just kind of always keeping her partly skeptical, always keeping her a little bit guarded with her hackles up.
Very guarded.
Yeah. And I like that.
Refuses to trust anybody because she always thinks they have a motive and they're trying to work an angle and that why would she ever trust anybody?
almost to the point though where it's a little bit overplayed. Like I know that she is damaged.
Right.
I don't need to be reminded quite as much, but I also have enjoyed now she gets teamed up with this team on this heist and they're treating her as anybody should be treated, but to her that's like royalty.
Yes.
And at some point, as a part of the heist, she does get actually treated like royalty. But it's kind of fun to watch how that inner dialogue, and sometimes she'll be like, Reen would hate this, or like, Reen, this goes against what Reen would say to me, but I kind of like it. And at one point, it gets, so she goes from literally not even being able to like be in the same room as these people for fear that they could have an angle on her and, taking food and squirreling it away and not wanting to be wasteful, to then being at a point in the story where there's several dresses she could choose from.
Yeah.
And you know what I
she
mean? And
does.
like suddenly it's like, it just goes to show you how lifestyle creep can really, and
Totally.
then she's starting to almost empathize unknowingly with the nobility, the people that she's killing.
Yeah.
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 So that's another cool thing that he's doing. And if he hadn't given us Reen's perspective, we wouldn't have realized that's one of the ways that her character is growing.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been such a stark, difference or contrast in her character development. That's totally a good point.
What do you think about Ham?
Ham's the thug, right?
Yeah.
Ham and Breeze kind of go at it a little bit.
Push and pull.
Yeah, they push and pull on each other.
That's the whole theme of his book almost.
I feel like I haven't gotten enough of Ham. Like I feel like I get Ham in the team meetings, and other than that, like I don't see much of him. He's just kind of like the muscle.
Yeah, because he is the muscle. He can burn pewter. But here's the thing I did like about him.
I do want to get back to this before you touch there. I do need to know what your second favorite character was.
Oh.
You started with Sazed, but I never got number 2. Ham. Okay.
Yeah. So that's so funny that you just remembered, because I was going to say the reason I like Ham is he's they have a lot of nicknames in this book for the types of metal that you can burn. They just call them thugs. But it does give me a mental image of Ham kind of being a strong, burly guy. For whatever reason, I think he's burning pewter all the time.
Well, he actually looks like Brad Pitt in Fight Club.
How do you know?
I looked it up, and also a fan art. But I also went back that he's kind of like a squirrely like Brad Pitt Fight Club looking dude. He's not like a beefcake.
So in my mind's eye, well, that's just fan art. We don't know for sure unless.
Well,
Sanderson
I mean, they would have taken the description of the guy.
Okay. Yeah.
Well,
anywho, I have him in my mind as being, they call him, you're a thug or whatever, but he takes this character who, his one thing that he can do really well, his power is strength of mind, strength of being, whatever. So if he's going to use that against you, it's to overpower you. Whether he's actually strong or not, that's his, and that's what his skill is. And yet he's the philosopher in the group. So it's just a funny contradiction. Yeah,
it is funny that you say that.
The musclehead's never the insightful person.
Literally the philosopher, he always busts out some Plato, passages here and there.
And that's what I put in here.
Yeah, he's always asking people to have a deeper question, a deeper meaning, and how he could talk to a wall.
It reminded me of me a little bit,
for
almost
sure.
to the point where people can get annoyed by that. And
they're like, don't let him ask you this question.
And when I was reading it, it did feel a tiny bit forced. It was really clear that Brandon was trying to get the reader to recognize that there are these bigger implications and consequences to the actions of what these people are doing. Right? There's even, so he's really clear about even the consequences of a flare with too much of a metal. Sanderson is big on consequences. I didn't actually need Ham but it did help because it made me, and he does it early on where he makes you think about the philosophy of, are we the good guys for killing the Lord Ruler?
Sure, yeah.
Are we, and it was a simple question. And the obvious answer is, I think as a reader, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, of course you are. You're, all of nobility is evil. It's easy to typecast all of them and just say, yes, they're the ones that are oppressing the ska. Brandon makes you really empathize with this rebellion effort. But then it's are they doing the right thing though? And Ham asks that. And just the duality of consequences. And in the book, there is a lot of senseless killing that happens. Not senseless, but there's a lot of killing that can happen in some of these scenes. where some of the nobility actually like were ska, or like they had misting abilities, or became, I forget the term, hawk something. There's a term for people who can hunt mistings, basically, and that have been trained their whole lives to fight them, but don't actually have allomancy.
I don't know. But I mean, that's just quick plug for the Inquisitors with the giant railroad spikes driven through their eyeballs and out the back of their head.
Well, those guys are obviously scary. You want those guys to die.
Those guys are savages.
But from a philosophical standpoint, I think the whole point is just like, not all of nobility is evil. And that's why Sanderson brings you to the ball, is to introduce you to a character like Elend. Who is a good guy and is almost mad at Ven for not empathizing more with the ska. And he's reading a book, about this actually happens after chapter 15, but we're on chapter
so we can
19.
Stay within part 2. But when you first meet him, she has no idea that she's talking to this. I mean, she knows he's at the ball, so he's got to be noble, but she does know she's at House Venture, and she's talking to this guy who just cannot be bothered with the party. He's on the upper balcony just reading, like could not care less. And they're talking about whatever, and he's like, oh yeah, like House Venture, they're so full of themselves, like, they're just bad dudes. And then she leaves the party and finds out that it's Ellen Venture, who's like, the heir to the throne. And so he's thinks that his family's a bad, doing it bad. And this guy just wants to be like, educated and
he's also young.
Path.
So he's fighting. He's kind of like just a rebellious.
He's rebelling. Yeah.
Rebelling against his parents, was just this like a fun theme for this young person to be doing, but it is contradictory. And Ven also is compelled by this person. Like
they have a natural gravitation towards each other.
But that's just a funny example. And I did think about that. Like, what if at some point in the future, she has that epiphany, right? Where she realizes, wait a minute, and brings us back all the way to that philosophy at the beginning where it's like, this is wrong.
Well, I think that this would be part of my prediction, is that Ellen thinks that his family is no good. They're one of, if not the biggest nobility house under Lord Ruler. And if you recall that the Lord Ruler made them all these nobility houses because they were there and they believed in this guy before he was divine. Well, they've got to know the skeletons in the closet, because he hooked them up and was like, yo, I'm going to make you noble houses if you, just... kind of look the other way. Yeah. And Ellen is the heir to the throne, so he's got to know about these dirty deeds.
Which is why he's reading that book, right? He's trying to understand. Maybe there's a lot of, he's been told one view from the Steel Ministry and one view of the world, and now he's trying to learn, maybe that's not the truth. Like, maybe the ska are onto something. Like, maybe what I'm a part of is not okay. I see
Ellen joining this band of merry thieves and helping to bring the Lord Ruler down.
Well, that would help create friction with the other houses, which is one of the it's one of the key areas of their heist, is to be able to do that.
And have the inside info on the Lord Ruler that nobody else has. So I certainly see him being a major part in bringing this guy down.
Yeah. So I'll one of the things I've been doing as I've been reading is, he talks about this at the end of the book, Sanderson, but not only did Sanderson write this book, but he has published annotations for every chapter. So basically, as he finished each chapter, he talks about what he liked about the chapter, why he wrote it, and gives you hidden background information. So I have been reading every annotation for every chapter as I've been going through, and I've got some special gems for you.
Ooh, I need
about
them.
Some hidden info, which will be fun.
Give me those hidden gems that you've been pulling for me.
Yeah, I do want to. Haze killers were the names of these things that were born
Haze
to kill.
Killers. Oh yeah,
Haze killers.
And those are the ones that are like, they're like ghosts that pick up stuff from the ground. Those are the mist wraiths. Okay.
That's where I've got a huge theory.
Oh, lay it on me.
So,
because the mist wraiths remind me, they scavenge. They pick up stuff off the ground and then they absorb it into their bodies. So a mist wraith might have 15 arms and like 6 heads and maybe like a leg hanging out of their back.
So they're this like thing. Remember, there's one of the very first scenes where he introduces Ven trying to learn how to use the metals.
Yeah.
It's basically a practice exercise where he takes her out in the mist for the first time, and she sees a mist wraith, doesn't know what it is. Burns 10, she can see it for the first time. It's this creature. And yeah, anything that it hovers over and ingests and eats, it becomes. And it can choose to like embody whatever it is that it eats.
Yeah.
So think about that. If you could get over anything that you've eaten, you could potentially become a person. So, what are you thinking?
Well, back to, we haven't really touched on Lord Renew, who is Vin's uncle, who's in this mansion, who's
and he is...
I believe that he is a mist wraith because...
Did you think that, or did I help you get to that?
Well, no, they talk about it in the book when they're like, who's Lord Renew? And they're like, oh, you don't want to know.
But they didn't tell you it was a mist wraith.
No, they don't tell you, but they say you don't want to know who this guy is or how we got there. So that just brought me back to that. But I do love where you're going with this.
But that's not all. So I think... So he's a mist wraith. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, for sure.
And he is an imposter pretending to be Lord Renault. I think so. I
love where this is going right now.
I read in the passages. It talks about. I'm going to read one. I'm going to try to find one passage for you.
One of the at the beginning of the chapters.
I'm going to read you chapters 13 epigraph. I'm going to see if you get to this, and I could be way off, dude. By the way, this might not happen.
Well, that's the whole point of this podcast.
That's the whole point of this. Okay. Oh, I'm going to read a couple. I know that I shouldn't let a simple Pac-Man perturb me. However, he is from Terrace, where the prophecies originated. If anyone could spot a fraud, would it not be he? Nonetheless, I continue my trek, going where the scribbled auguries proclaim that I will meet my destiny, walking, feeling Rashek's eyes on my back, jealous, mocking, hating. Then I'm going to read you.
Are you saying that the Lord Ruler is a mist wraith because he's got eyes on his back, or people are just watching him? Okay.
Here's another one. It seems Rashek represents a growing faction in the Terrace culture. A large number of youths think that their unusual power should be used for more than fieldwork, husbandry, and stone carving. They're rowdy, even violent. Far different from the quiet, discerning Terrace philosophers and holy men that I have known. They will have to be watched carefully, these Terrace men. They could be very dangerous if given the opportunity and motivation. And then I'm going to read you one more.
So there he's talking about there's a subsection of youths of Terrace men that are...
Way back then.
That want to be more... Yes, back then, that are more than just keepers or whatever they're doing.
They have skills. They
want
can remember
more.
Things.
They
want
to
know all
do
religions. More. And then it says, sometimes I wonder if I'm going mad. Perhaps it is due to the pressure of knowing that I must somehow bear the burden of an entire world. Perhaps it is caused by the death I have seen, the friends I have lost, the friends I have been forced to kill. Either way, I sometimes see shadows following me, dark creatures that I don't understand or wish to understand. Are they perhaps some figment of my overtaxed mind? So one of my hunches maybe is that, and he also talks in one of these chapters about... So he went through and he killed all of the Terrace men, some of which were his friend. Some of the Terrace men helped him were Pac-Men that helped him up north.
Sure.
That took him to the person who philosophized that he was basically the chosen one, the Lord Ruler.
Sure.
I'm wondering if the mist wraith was Rashek. Maybe.
Well, there's multiple mist wraiths, right?
Yeah, but maybe all mist wraiths were, Terrace men or people that he killed.
Well, it is interesting about the
Terrace men wants to get back at the Lord Ruler too, so that would give motive for why did this mist wraith even become Lord Renault, and why does Lord Renault want to help with this heist?
Oh, so I thought you were talking about the broader mist wraiths, but you're talking about
he might be Rashek, dude. How
that
dope
is
would that
so
be?
Juicy. I love that.
That's my big
Well,
revelation.
and do you think that the mist wraiths are just like dead Terrace men? Because since they can remember everything, they can picks up off the ground and attach it to their
I
bodies.
think that when he killed them, they had mysterious abilities.
They remembered from even 2,000 years ago about how they
and
could.
then also look at what I think there's abilities we haven't even learned yet that Sazed has. So they have something. I don't think they were killed easy in the same way that Lord Ruler isn't killed easy.
Yeah, sure.
But I do think that whatever he did to them, it damned them to hell, basically. In this world of miscreant creatures that are hovering the ground in the mists. But the mists also empower Ven and gives her the Mistborn's an added ability, and I'm almost wondering.
Well, does it give? It doesn't necessarily give her the ability. She just puts on that cloak and can be.
I'm guessing. I am projecting. I think based on a couple of sentences, it just seems to me she feels calling
to in the mist.
So why does the mist imbued with this magical quality? I think it has something to do with the Terracemen. I think all of those people were
the Terracemen. He
went and tried to wipe out all religions, and in doing so, he thinks that those people, I think that would be a way that could surprise him. Maybe he doesn't realize that one of the mists, because they were bred to be. And reprogrammed to be very docile and very compliant.
Yeah,
so
sure.
it would be very unusual for even a mist wraith to become a human and still have the vendetta unless you were Rashek and he was stronger than the others. He was more compelling to the others. He was trying to basically I don't think campaign against him, but essentially campaign against him. For
like, yo, this guy's not the prophet.
So I think that was
this guy's
him.
not the prophet.
There's one other person that he talks about in the book that was basically the guy who philosophized that he was the Lord Ruler, kind of turned against him too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think that it could be Rashek, and that'd be an interesting plot twist if we were to see that.
Unbelievable. But they would need to. You'd have to totally bring Rashek back into the fold. You couldn't just have it in the passages.
Maybe it's not central to the plot, but it's something that if you were an observant reader,
then you would know. So maybe they don't say that it's Rashek.
But
maybe
if you get to know,
that makes it super juicy.
So,
and that's the thing about the Cosmere.
He would journal about it too. You know what I mean? He was journaling about something that really bothered him. Why does he keep bringing up Rashek?
Mm-hmm.
What gives Renault a motive if he's a Mistborn? So that's the only thing I could think of. Unless you have any other, that's my only theory right now.
No, I don't have any other theories. That's an incredibly juicy fan theory there.
What else? I thought of one other thing.
No, my prediction is just Ellen's joining the squad, and
I like that. I'll read you some of
because it's got to come out that Vin is not who she is, and Ellen's gonna be like, "Whoa, I don't want any part of that." But actually, let's take this guy down.
Mm-hmm. So these are I found a website, and the site is called coppermine.net.
Oh, I heard that is just riddled with spoilers, so be careful.
Oh, no. This right here is only his annotations. So you can find tons of stuff in the archive.
Okay. I heard the site itself is riddled, so you just have to be careful on what pages you go to. And whatnot.
Oh, yeah, thanks. So far, I haven't gotten off this one, but the reason I'm here is because Sanderson's website, if you actually want to see the chapter-by-chapter annotations, you have to literally click into it back, and it kept taking me to the top of the browser. This has just one continuous flow of all the annotations.
Nice.
So if you read, I'll start you at chapter 1.
Define annotation in this sense here.
So for example, he just writes about the prologue. So he says, okay, some spoiler stuff here. Minas does make a return later in the book, as you probably know. I had to even remind myself who Minas was. You know how at the very beginning of the prologue, it talks about the old guy?
Yeah, at the plantation.
Who basically was not correcting Kel, but was kind of you're going to do that? That's a big deal.
Yeah. They're like...
It's his thoughts in the chapter. He leaks a couple of things, small things Ven was supposed to be a boy the first time he wrote it.
Okay.
That's one thing. Also...
I like that she's just frail girl.
Yeah, he made the change. I don't think he talks about it in here. But one of the things that I wanted to bring up... See if I can find it. Actually, I can probably just go to it here and scroll through. There's a couple of really good ones that he talks about in here, but it's just things from, he reads all of his books to an alpha group ahead of time, and then they give him insight sometimes, like a bunch of readers that he calls his alpha readers will read it. And so he had a version of Mistborn before this one. It was called Mistborn Prime. And that book never got published, but...
I don't like the name.
I think he just refers to it as the first Mistborn.
Like V1.
Uh-huh.
Sure.
But he leaked some of it, like he leaked some bits of it out on the internet. You can't find it anymore, but he talks about it in here. I will try to find one that I like here. So here's one example. So this is chapter 4, part 1. The introductions. I worry that this scene is a little too long and perhaps a little too obvious as we bring in separate members of the crew. However, it seemed like the best way and adheres a little bit to the heist genre framework I'm using. My favorites of the group are, of course, Ham and Breeze. I knew I wanted to use a smaller crew than you see in some heist stories. I wanted to get to know them better and deal with them more than one has the opportunity for in a movie like Ocean's 11. Ham and Breeze, then, formed the basis for my group. Simply put, they're both guys who are fun to talk to. I can put them in a room with each other or a vent, and an interesting conversation will blossom. I was a little worried about Ham when I first started writing him. The warrior philosopher is perhaps a character you've seen before. I haven't, because I haven't read other fantasy. In this case, I knew I wanted a character who would be a foil for Breeze. When Breeze tends to be arrogant, long-winded, and manipulative, I came up with someone humble, long-winded, and kindly, mixing a desire to understand the world and a mind that thinks about things a little differently from others, and I had Ham. I think he turned out all right.
God, is this just like so metaphorical for the plot goblins right here that we've got Breeze and Ham sitting next to each other?
Dude, that is crazy.
It's so funny.
One of the things I wanted to say in here.
I'm not egotistical, people, I swear. But I am long-winded.
I am long-winded. Do you want to know something about Breeze that he not going to talk about?
Yeah, give it to me.
Breeze is from nobility. 100% noble class.
That dude is dressed so sharp, he's got to be.
But nobody knows. And Sanderson leaks it in here for you if you read the annotations.
That would be juicy. I'm going to definitely go through those.
But basically what he says is if you read the annotation that aligns with the chapter you're on, it won't spoil anything. If you go ahead... Like if you
I feel like I'll probably read it as like an afterthought.
Read it as you go. Send
me this link, will you?
Yeah, definitely. There was one that I thought was pretty cool. Let me see if it'll let me. I snipped a couple out.
Do you just have this in your work email right now?
Yeah, I snipped a couple out.
This fires me up.
Well, dude, I take this stuff seriously.
I love it.
So some of the ones I liked. Oh, that's chapters too far ahead. Okay, here's some. Originally, by the way, this is chapters 4-2 annotation, so chapter 4. He says, originally, by the way, Yedin wasn't the one who hired the team. There was no employer. Kelsier just wanted to try and overthrow the Lord Ruler. The main way I took the focus off stealing the adium, making this less of a heist book and more of a Mission Impossible style book, was to put the focus on raising and training the army. Having Yedin paying them to get them an army worked much better for this format.
Yeah, I do like that because honestly, I had to go back and watch a YouTube video of somebody almost doing like what we're doing, but in it was 6 minutes that they went through the first 2 parts that I had to remember that Yedin was even the one that contracted these guys, and it wasn't just Kelsier on a vendetta. So
interesting though, right? So
yeah.
You can, and he does this for all of his books, man. So I think the way I'm going to continue to read Brandon Sanderson is I'll get done with the chapter.
I'm definitely going to do that.
And some of these
are very insightful.
Like he posted them in 2006. So I think he reread the book and then gave you by sight by. So here's another one that I really liked. This is for chapter 7. He just says, "Oh, by the way, people often ask me how far ahead I plan my novels. Well, I've noted already in this annotation that some things, such as the Kelsier-Marsh-Mare relationship, come to me as I write. They appear when I need something to fill a particular hole in the story. However, other things, however, are quite well planned. An example. Kelsier's warning about not flaring metals too much is a foreshadowing for book 3 of the trilogy.
Yeah.
3 books ahead.
Book 3?
Yeah, he said, you'll see what I mean in a couple of years. Also, there's something very important about Ben's brother that will be hard to pick out, but has been foreshadowed since the first book.
So I, at first thought, before I came to the Lord Ruler on the epigraphs, I thought that was maybe Marsh talking about, because they talk about how Marsh tried and failed with the rebellion, that maybe it was coming from Marsh's perspective on how he was a prophet and trying to save the Ska.
Yeah.
But then I read a few more and I'm like, oh, it's not
him.
Marsh.
Yeah, so you nailed it. It's got to be him, but he just has some interesting things in here, man. Like, I was going to see if there was anything that really surprised me. Oh, just interesting stuff like chapter 10. In the original draft, he didn't have Kelsier showing up to that first meeting.
With Kamen or whatever?
When the very first time they were trying to recruit Ska for the rebellion, and Yedin was up there talking, and then they had Kelsier. Just like small, interesting things. He was thinking about that, like in the draft, and then he just decided to write Kelsier back in, and he tells you why he did it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the annotations. So on the page, does it have every chapter, and you just have to scroll to the bottom, or what?
Yeah, you just have, it goes from chapter. He literally has.
Oh, you scroll down.
He
like
annotates
starts
why
with
he
one
dedicated the book.
down.
Like
Nice.
Apparently that's to his grandma. I thought Beth might have been his wife, but it's his grandma. He annotates the map is annotated. He talks
cool.
about how the map got
Yeah,
made.
I'm excited to read through that.
I'll read you one more because I thought this was interesting. Chapter 10. He said, "We've now seen Sazed preach a couple of religion to members of the crew. You may be interested in my process of coming up with this character. It actually began when I was watching the movie The Mummy. Yes, I know. Sometimes it's embarrassing where we come up with ideas. However, my inspiration for Sazed was the moment when the oily little thief character gets confronted by the mummy and pulls out a whole pile of holy symbols. He goes through each one, praying to each god, looking for one that would help him. I began to wonder what it would be like to have a kind of missionary who preached 100 different religions, a man who, instead of advancing his own beliefs, tried to match a set of beliefs to the person, kind of like a tailor looking to fit a man with the perfect and most comfortable hat. That's where the inspiration of the entire sect of Keepers began. Soon, I had the idea that the Lord Ruler would have squished all the religions in the final empire, and I thought of a sect of mystics who tried to collect and preserve all of these religions. I put the two ideas together, and suddenly I had Sazed's power." Wow.
God, I mean, there's to go about life that way, thinking about characters for your own stories, is so beyond my
crazy, man.
My perspective on the world.
Could you imagine just be sitting there in everyday conversation and just relating that back to the 3 books you're writing?
I could not imagine.
Yeah. So,
like looking at this painting on my wall and be like, wow, that's like.
I mean,
I'm gonna build a world around that. Like I'm gonna talk about how a pond is reflecting these crazy colors.
Well, just think about it. You and I just sat here and talked for an hour and 5 minutes about just part 1 and 2 of one of his books.
That's insane.
He's truly created a whole world.
Yeah,
like 100, dog.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing that I'm really excited about the Cosmere is that it's all one world and it's so many books. Like I have a hunch that Reen is definitely coming back in another book at some point.
I'm waiting for Reen to come back too.
I'd like to, like we were saying earlier, Reen's got a lot of good points. He has a very, pessimistic view on the world, but he's got some good advice. He's just been burned a lot, so I would love a little bit of some more backstory on Reen in another novel.
I'd love that, and I wonder if they're going to talk more about Vin's dad.
Yes. Oh, I mean, he's definitely... Well, she gets interrogated when they break into the Frederick Shaw, and only one of the Inquisitors goes and fights Kelsier, and like two or three of them go for her, and they get back and they're like, I wonder why that happened. Like, he's got a vendetta against you, Kelsier. Like, why would they go after Vin?
Yeah.
And they just pummel her into the ground trying to figure out who her dad is. So, like... They must also know a little bit that they've maybe have like a mole or something.
Well, they know that she has Mistborn powers, and so the only way to get Mistborn powers is to be from the nobility in your bloodline
and get lucky.
Apparently, Mistborn's capabilities came from the Lord Ruler gifting it to his subjects who were there for him during his ascension, during his uprise. And so that's how it happens. So the only way to become a Misting or a Mistborn is to have some or maybe part nobility. Mm-hmm. So she came, her mom basically was a prostitute.
Yes.
And, he was an obligator.
Yes.
I believe.
And the plot goblins are back, brought to you by the everybody's favorite nicotine pouches in Spearmint.
I think that is copyright.
Don't do these 6 milligrams because they'll hurt your tum-tum, but the 3 milligrams will make you feel like you're floating. may cause temporary tummy aches, but they'll sure make you feel good.
There's some truth to that, man, but the sixes are dirty.
Sixes are dirty.
While I have a chance here to maybe look back at I did put together an agenda. We just basically walked through the first hour with no agenda.
I know.
So I'd like to know, you basically said that you were somewhat overwhelmed, but
Underwhelmed.
Or I'm sorry, you said you were somewhat underwhelmed, and then you changed it to, you felt like...
Move the mic closer. It's not as crisp as I would like it to be.
Check.
Oh, so much better.
You said that at first you were slightly, or right now we're through part 2 of the book, and you felt slightly underwhelmed, and then you changed it to slightly ambitious.
The word I would use was ambitious.
Oh, the one word to explain
Sure.
how you feel about the book so far is ambitious. I said compelling. And so what would you rate it at?
So here's the thing. I am a absolute massive fan of Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, and I'm having a really hard time comparing the two in my mind, because that's based on a down and out character who gets brought up in a gang of thieves, and they go on a massive heist, and that book is absolutely stunning and is really a page turner from start to finish. It does get a little slow in the middle, but in comparison, I when I give that book a low 9, I'm giving this book.
You give it a low 9?
Yeah, I give Lies of Locke Lamora a low 9.
Oh, you're
I'm using Name of the Wind as a 10.
Okay.
So
Name of the Wind or The Wise Man's Fear?
They're
both
the King
10s?
Killer Chronicle is a 10.
Yeah.
So in comparison to Locke Lamora, which I can't really compare the two for the sake of this conversation, but I would give it a 6.8 in comparison. But that aside, if I wipe that away, my enjoyment of the book, the character development, the plot, and where it's going, I'm at a low 7.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know we just went through some of those annotations and stuff. So my thought on this is I tend to be a little bit more optimistic in general. You tend to be a little bit more of a realist. I wouldn't say you're pessimistic, but I would say you're a bit more shrewd. You're total breeze. You're totally breeze. You know,
I'm totally breeze.
Yeah,
I'm very breezy about this book.
Yeah, I think you know what you like, and you have no problem saying what you don't like or what you expect out of any material thing or any work of art.
Sure.
Whereas I tend to be more. I think I'm always searching for
The
what
deeper
is
meaning.
Great about this.
That's
Or what
why
do I
you're ham.
like, which makes me a little bit more of a ham. That would be a good name for the pod, Ham and Breeze.
Ham and breeze. Ham and breeze.
I would give the book so far, from just up to part 2, I'm giving it a 7.6.
Okay.
But, and then this might be contentious, but I would give it an 8.4 if I include the experience that I'm having reading the annotations.
Sure.
Brandon's annotations as I'm finishing each chapter.
Sure. And I would...
You thought that's cheap.
Well, I think that if you're going to rate the book, you have to rate it based on the reading experience, which is why I don't think it's fair for me to compare it to Locke Lamora, because I need to rate the book on how I'm reading it. So I'm at a low 7.
Here's my thing. I actually disagree. I feel like you can be allowed to allow other art that other books you've read and things like that. I feel like you should allow that. Maybe you should look at everything in a vacuum. Maybe I'm wrong, but I also think that sometimes as we get older and we have more experiences, maybe the reason I like this book is because I've had different experiences in my life. You know what I mean? That have all catapulted to a moment. And maybe 10 years from now, I come back and I like it less or maybe more.
Well, what's also not fair is that I'm comparing a book that I'm 50% of the way through a book that I'm 100% done. Ask me how I felt about Locke Lamora 50% of the way through, and who's to say that I would have given it, a low 9.
It's so hard
a low 9
to go back in time and give yourself a true rating at 50%.
Right, and so, like I was saying earlier, Locke Lamora gets slow in the middle, whereas I think this book is a little bit slow in the beginning. And so I don't see this book going anywhere but up, based off of this being on the pedestal of one of the best fantasy books ever. So that's why I said it's ambitious and I'm optimistic in where it's going to go. I certainly think that my rating is going to go up significantly.
It's interesting that, Name of the Wind is a 10 because I think that you are somebody that does I think you kind of do want to be drawn in pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people do, and there's no problem with that. But Name of the Wind, I felt like didn't do that so much. Like you had to get into it a little bit before you really. But maybe, what do you think it was then that do you think if someone had stopped you halfway through and you had to give a rating, it would be lower? Because you look back and you give it a 10, but.
I can tell you, well, I don't think it's, I'm giving it a 10 because it is what started my journey on this entire.
So sentiment.
Yeah. I mean, it's got sentimental value, but it wasn't until Quoth is just absolutely getting pummeled in an alleyway in the book that I was literally tearing up on the couch that made me so invested. Yeah. So I was so invested in Quoth. That is what makes that a 10. I think there's a lot of aspects about that book. Like, I think his relationship with Denna left a lot to be, desired. Mm-hmm. Ooh, I guess we're never going to find out where that goes, but there's a lot of aspects about that book that do have holes. So, but I'm not invested in Vin or Kelsier like I was Quoth.
Yeah, his writing style is just so captivating. He can build a character, man.
Yeah,
I mean, and I don't know, maybe he caught lightning in a bottle with those two books, and maybe that's why he's struggling with the third, as he knows it was, pretty genius work. But and back to Locke Lamora, man. I mean, I was so invested in Locke Lamora. I mean, I wanted that dude to wake up every day in a good mood. I was so invested. Wow. Like, I mean, another book where you get teary-eyed. And so I just thought that in comparison to the two, they have a lot of similarities. That doesn't really have hard magic. There's really no magic. I don't think there's any magic in Locke Lamora. But they have an ambitious goal. And would you say this is almost... this feels like kind of like a PG-13, kind of like not a young adult book,
borderline.
Whereas it felt to me like Name of the Wind, there was nothing in it that made it an adult per se, but it definitely didn't feel like a young adult book.
No, and Locke Lamora, again, I hate to keep bringing this up, but I mean, they drop the F word here and there, and people are getting beat up like in the back alley, and so
Witcher
it's just
gets gory, like it is profane at certain parts, and there's some gruesome scenes. So not to say that it has to be gruesome in order to be an adult book, but I think part of it's on the comprehension. I think this is interesting because I think you can enjoy this as an adult. Probably even enjoy this as a young adult. I think there are things that he's put in here that's made it a little bit more fun for readers who can go a few layers deeper, like what we're trying to do with the epigraphs and stuff, and making some predictions. I don't think a lot of people probably would do that as a young adult.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's influencing you, because to me it does feel like I'm getting he's giving me a little bit too much.
Yeah,
at
it feels very hand-holdy a little bit.
Handholds. He's given me my present before Christmas on occasion, and I don't think I ever felt that once in the Kingkiller series.
Yeah, there's so much mystery in the Kingkiller, and here, like, obviously there is a lot of mystery, but I don't have to think about it on my own.
Yeah. But you know what? I do like it a lot, and I think maybe part of it is because we're podcasting about it. I was spending a lot of time trying to think of... I wanted to have one theory for you.
Yeah.
So I really was thinking a lot about it, and that made it more fun for me. So maybe I'm building it up to be more than it might be.
Well, and I think for you're doing it while you're reading. I'm coming up with a lot of more of my thoughts like after the fact on the podcast. So I think that's what makes us a great ham and breeze.
Well, I like feeding you with stuff,
Yeah,
too.
no, it's very fun for me.
I wanted to feed you was just the plants in general. I haven't my thought on why he does this in the book, but it talks a lot about how plants and trees and things, like one of the quotes is plants that weren't brown were a rarity cultivated and kept by the nobility. Like, you're living in a gray world, ashen gray world. I'm just wondering your thoughts on that in general. Like, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, how we think that maybe the deepness had something to do with that. It could be environmental.
Well, there's a specific quote where Kelsier is trying to talk Vin back into kind of joining the crew after she's, recovering, and he's talking about he has a folded up picture of a flower in his wallet or whatever, and she's like,
and it's Mare's.
Yeah, and she's like, actually, I would like to see a flower someday, and so I really, that aspect of the book is, so much bigger than them just trying to take down the Lord Ruler. Like they're really...
That's going to get us to book 3.
They're really, itching for a greater being. It's so much more than just their own personal gain and even just bigger than freeing the Ska. Like they're trying change the world itself as they know it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know, I think that part of what I'm realizing, because we're making these predictions, there are spoilers in this by default.
Yeah,
and that's
sure.
okay, actually. Like, I think we can have some that don't have spoilers, some that do. One of the things that I'm wondering, for whatever reason, you bring up the flowers, make me think of Mare.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me think of, that was Kelsier's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who he wanted to have children with, and she potentially sold him out to the Lord Ruler when they tried to first go
steal
into
whatever
empire,
they were stealing. Yeah,
they were trying to get into that locked room and find the adium or do something, and basically map the place. And she sold him out, and that's why. And then the Lord Ruler thanked her, but then several weeks later sent her to the pits, and she ends up dying there.
Mm-hmm.
I know that he did that because you needed to have Kelsier. It's always talking about how he's smiling. It's kind of like the Joker. He's smiling through the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a defense mechanism created to, allow him to... He is attaching himself so much to this vision about the Lord Ruler because he has nothing left.
Mm-hmm.
He was betrayed by the love of his life. And I'm just wondering, what do you think about that? Do you think she actually did it? Why would she be in cahoots with him anyways?
I feel like I have to... you get my final prediction and then just see where the book takes me. So I feel like
Mare,
I feel like the Lord Ruler calls her out and is like, thank you for betraying your husband. And so
and why did he have to do that? Even he could have easily, he obviously had them.
This guy,
and he could have gotten
the Lord Ruler is very smart. I think he played her against him. I don't think she had anything to do with it. Maybe
he had a vendetta for Kelsier. It almost seems like.
Yeah. So I have a feeling that Kelsier plays into some aspect of the Lord Ruler's upbringing a little bit. And why does Kelsier have such a harp against the Lord Ruler? He's a thief. He doesn't need to rule the empire. So I feel like they go back as kids maybe a little bit, and the Lord Ruler, has a vendetta against Kelsier a little bit. So.
Do you think he can control minds or something too? I'm wondering if we're going to learn more about these hidden powers that the Lord Ruler has. Maybe was it actually Mare that was there? I don't know.
Yeah.
This whole mystery things really has got into my head. At any point, someone could not be who they are, and I'm just wondering: are there any other characters that could be? And now that I think about that, in order for my other theory to work, Lord Ruler can't have put the pieces together that... Well, maybe he could put the pieces together that a Mistwraith would potentially become a human and pretend to be someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. And for my other theory to work, I'm assuming that he doesn't know that, especially wouldn't consider that as a Terrace man. Yeah. And I'm imagining, the way I've interpreted the passages, I think they're probably all Terrace men. That makes sense to me. But yeah, I'm just wondering how did Mare even talk to him ahead of time?
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect.
Do you think the Lord Ruler has a lady? Is he a eunuch? Was he a
maybe? I don't know. I need a little bit more background on this guy.
Yeah.
He just seems like the buff, blonde hair, military guy, just sitting in his ivory castle, just not a cool dude. And
I would recommend you do.
I need to go back and read the epigraphs a little bit.
Read every epigraph from start to finish to the current chapter you're on. It does talk about his journey north into I believe it's called... I forget.
Yeah, I'd like to go back and read them because again, like we said on episode 1, I picked up on that, but I never went back and reread them. Mm-hmm. I got 18 of them to go back and read, so I'd like to...
Yeah, I mean, it's not earth-shattering, but it gave me enough to think a little bit about what's going on. But yeah, I was curious about your thoughts on that. Some of the, what would you say, like some of the, we don't have to, we can stop this podcast.
Yeah, we got back onto film and outro, and we just kept going.
I was just going to ask you about Dachshund, if you like Dox.
Dachshund's Kelsier's right hand.
He's a Lucius Fox.
He is a Lucius Fox.
He's
not a Mistang. He doesn't have any powers. Like I like that he's just.
I like he's in the group and doesn't have the powers.
Right.
And somehow became. Well, he was close with Kelsier before he became a Mistborn.
Yeah, he's just like Kelsier's boy.
Yeah, but he is invaluable. I think he's a counterweight in a lot of ways to Kelsier. Probably need him, but probably not going to see anything too crazy from him.
Yeah, if he's Kelsier's boy, I feel like we're going to get a little juice out of him.
Yeah. Well, dude, I'm the next pod we'll have finished the book.
Yeah.
We're going to read parts 3, 4, and 5. We're going to see if our prediction came true. We're going to learn about how this book wraps up. He probably leaves some to be desired, right, for book 2.
There's
so we might not
two more books.
Yeah, we might not get a lot of we might get less resolution than we're expecting. But I do imagine in this book, I'm imagining they pull the heist off. In some way. They're not going to... It's an ambitious goal for Yendon then to maintain the siege of his empire, right? And then... Because literally, they're just trying to get him away from the empire. They can't subdue him. They probably not going to be able to kill him unless the 11th metal works somehow.
I think, if I was going to look at the last 5 pages... Lord Ruler maybe gets murdered, maybe he doesn't. But regardless, Kelsier or Sazed or Vin, one of them it's going to be a cliffhanger. They're going to get...
You think a cliffhanger?
They're going to be kidnapped, or something's going to happen to them where they're on the brink of death. And it's going to end, and then book 2 is going to kick off with them like in recovery mode, or they've got to get a member of the team like back from the clutches of the Lord Ruler or the Inquisitors. Like those guys aren't going anywhere.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that's kind of where I see it happening. I think they pull it off, but something's going to go awry with a member of the team that they're going to have to like get back in book 2.
Yeah. Something else I was thinking of with adium being the precious metal that's imbued with these qualities. Maybe like a current version of this book would be like it's Bitcoin. And the people who mined Bitcoin somehow end up controlling the whole... Like in a dystopian world.
Yeah, right.
Let's just pretend like
the decentralized becomes centralized.
And then anybody who actually mined Bitcoin has all the control because they half it every 4 years until there's none left. So what if there's a future where... Literally, we all have it, and then those are the ultra-rich nobles, and then we are the Scott who didn't.
Buy. Dogecoin.
Yeah,
to the moon.
That's what we're doing here is just pushing crypto. We've really gotten off.
Okay. Well,
what's it timed off at the same time?
All right.
Hey, man, I love doing this. I think we had a fun time. Pod 2 in the books here, and we're gonna talk plot next time. We'll come back and we'll give you our thoughts after finishing the books, new ratings, new books, new hooks.
A successful Plot Goblins number 2. Very excited for part 3, 4, and 5.
All right, little puppy doggy.
All right, boo-boo.
Talk later.
Goodbye now.